Welcome. This is Everyday Paradoxes Tiny Truths About Becoming, a 16-part audio series based on my book. These are reflections on the quiet contradictions that shape our growth. I'm Leslie DeMello. In each episode, we'll sit with one small truth from ordinary life, where psychology meets contemplation and insight becomes practice. Let's begin. Chapter 11. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's proof that you're alive. In this chapter, we talk about emotional honesty. We talk about courage and we talk about the strength to be seen. We are not going to be focusing on fixing anything or on getting anything right. Just a space to soften, to reflect, to reconnect with yourself, with those parts of yourself that you may have protected for a really long time. So, I once heard a nurse who said she could always tell who struggled the most in the hospital. It wasn't the people who were in obvious pain, it wasn't the ones crying or asking for help. It was the ones who kept saying, I'm fine, it's nothing, I don't want to bother anyone. And she said those were usually the people who waited the longest before coming in. They were the people who were used to handling everything on their own. And often by the time they arrived, they were exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally. They had survived by being strong, and they hadn't learned how to be held. And the story kind of stayed with me because many of us, and me included, have worn the same bracelet in life. And it's not one that you see, but one that quietly says, don't worry about me. I'm fine. I'm okay. I'll manage. And yet there's always that something in us that is longing to be met. Now most of us didn't wake up one day and decide to hide. None of us. We haven't just woken up one day and decided, okay, I'm going to hide. It's something that we learned. We learned when showing emotion felt inconvenient. We learned when crying didn't feel welcome. We learned when needing help was met with discomfort, dismissal, or silence. We learned when being the strong one earned approval and being vulnerable, it felt risky. So, what did we do? We adapted. We built our armor. For some of us, that armor looks like humor. We make things light before they get heavy. We laugh it off. For some of us, it looks like competence. To be the one who always has it together. For some of us, it looks like busyness. We keep ourselves so occupied that there's no space for us to feel. And for some of us, it looks like detachment. We stay logical, we stay calm, we stay unaffected, even when that something inside of us is breaking us. And just to be clear, there's nothing wrong with having this armor. Because this armor, it protected us. It helped us survive. It helped us stay functional, capable, admired. But with that armor, there's also come that cost. Because that armor, it not only blocks pain, it blocks connection. And the truth is that we cannot selectively numb. Because when we mute our sadness, when we mute our fear, when we mute our shame, we also dim our joy, our intimacy, our wonder, and our love. And over the period of time, life becomes manageable. We learn how to manage life, but it becomes less vivid. It becomes less vibrant. We notice that we can handle anything, but we don't feel deeply moved. Or we are able to be strong for others, but rarely do we let someone be strong for us. Or we crave closeness, but when it arrives, we pull back. And this isn't because we are broken, it's because armor does exactly what it's designed to do and nothing more. Vulnerability, it's not about tearing off the armor. It's about loosening it enough to breathe. So all of us have these armors in some way or another. For some of us it's a very heavy armor, for some of us it's a light armor. So what kind of armor do you rely on the most? What kind of armor do you rely on the most? Is it humor? Is it independence, competence, busyness, or emotional distance? Try to think about what kind of armor you relied on the most. For many people, it's busyness. Busyness also comes up a lot for many people. Busyness. They keep themselves so busy that they don't have time to feel. And when did you first learn that this armor was necessary? For many of us, we start creating this armor in our childhood experiences to protect ourselves. And this armor, it served its purpose. It kept us safe. This armor once kept us safe. And we really don't need to judge it. We don't have to live inside of it forever. Now, the thing with this armor is that very often it looks very respectable, like saying fine when you're not fine, using humor to deflect discomfort, staying busy so we don't have to feel lonely, being the helper who never asks for help, and staying logical when you're actually hurting. And when we put on this armor, you might notice that you feel disconnected even when you're in a relationship, or you crave intimacy but you resist it, or you feel strong but you feel oddly numb. Having this armor, recognizing that we have this armor, it doesn't mean that we are broken. It simply means that we put on this armor in order to adapt to what was happening around us or what is happening around us. There was this man who stood at every gathering, and someone finally asked him, "Why don't you sit?" And the man replied, "I just want to be ready in case something goes wrong." He was always ready and he was always exhausted. And some of us do the exact same thing emotionally. We stay braced, we stay prepared, we stay guarded, and then we wonder why the rest never comes. We wonder why we never feel rested. When we hear the word vulnerability, when we hear the word vulnerability, the first thought that comes to mind is we imagine everything falling apart. We picture uncontrollable crying. We picture oversharing or losing our composure, becoming a burden, or opening a door we will not be able to close. And so we tend to avoid being vulnerable. And it's not because we are afraid of being honest, but it's because we are afraid that we will not survive the honesty. Does that sound familiar? We avoid vulnerability not because we are afraid of being honest, but because we are afraid that we will not survive the honesty. But vulnerability is not about collapse, but rather it's about capacity, the ability to stay present when something inside of you feels uncomfortable, being emotionally resilient. How can this show up in our everyday life? It can look like telling a friend, I'm not okay today, and letting the silence sit. It can look like admitting that you don't have an answer instead of pretending that you do. It's allowing yourself to say, I miss you, without knowing how it will be received, or asking for help before you're completely depleted, or naming a feeling without explaining it away. That's what vulnerability can look like in daily life. And none of these moments involve you falling apart. They involve staying with yourself while being seen. And the amazing thing is that every time we do this, every time we tell a friend that I'm not okay today, or we admit we don't have an answer, or we say I miss you, or we ask for help before we are completely destroyed, or we name our feelings, every time we do this, even in small ways, what happens is that we share something real, we feel the discomfort, and we survive it. And maybe the response is kind. Maybe we get a kind response. Maybe we get an awkward response. Maybe we get an imperfect response. But our nervous system, it registers something vital. What it registers? It registers, I told the truth and I'm still here. And that's not weakness, that's strength. It's not that brittle kind of strength that resists life, that insists on control, but it's that flexible kind of strength. It's that strength that lets us bend without breaking, that allows the feeling to move through us without us shutting down. And you can think of it like learning to stay in water. At first, you panic, you flail, you want to escape. But then slowly you realize I can float, I can breathe, I don't have to fight the water. And vulnerability is like that. The more we practice staying in discomfort, the more our system learns that openness is not danger. And once our body learns that, we stop equating honesty with threat. We begin to trust ourselves, not because nothing hurts, but because what we realize is that we can stay present when it does. And that's emotional safety, that's resilience, that's strength. And that's why I started with talking about armor, because we have put on that armor in order to adapt. And most of the time, we have put that armor on during our childhood when we didn't know better. And then we have kept carrying that armor with us throughout life, using that armor to protect us without realizing that the armor has already served its purpose. We can let go of it. But we've been living with it for so long that it has become a part of us. And now we find it difficult to let go of it. And that's why we are now learning how to let go of the armor, how to let ourselves be vulnerable, how to let ourselves simply be, how to let ourselves say, I don't know, how to ask for help before you get desperate, how to let someone see that you're tired, how to name a feeling without explaining it away, or how to admit that something really matters to you. These moments when we do this, they do not weaken us, but they free us because we are no longer carrying everything alone. We are no longer carrying everything alone. So, the question that I had asked earlier, what armor do we rely on the most? Do we rely on humor? Do we rely on sarcasm? Do we rely on busyness? Do we rely on avoidance? Because all of us, to some degree, we have our armors. Because there is something that I'm meaning to do, but I'm using avoidance as an excuse to protect myself from putting myself out there, so to speak. And what feeling is it protecting you from? Whatever armor you're putting, what feeling is it protecting you from? And along with vulnerability comes another big word, and that's shame. And shame survives in secrecy. Shame grows in the quiet places where we believe if they really knew me, they'd run away. If I showed this part of myself, I'd be too much. Or if I let this be seen, I'll be exposed. Shame doesn't shout, shame whispers. And because shame whispers, we often mistake it for truth. Because shame whispers, we often mistake it for truth. What is important to understand? Shame isn't proof that there's something wrong with you. Shame is like vulnerability, like the armor. It's proof that something once needed protection. It's proof that something once needed protection. And shame forms when we learn. And often we learn this very, very early in our life that certain feelings, certain needs, certain experiences are not welcome. And so we tuck them away. We keep them hidden. Not because they are bad, but because we are afraid of losing connection. The thing that you never talk about, even with people close to you. The story that we soften or we edit because it feels embarrassing. The feeling we dismiss because, or the feeling we dismiss with it's stupid before anyone else can. Or the part of us that we keep private. Not because it's sacred, but because it feels unsafe to share. Shame convinces us that hiding is what keeps us safe. Shame needs secrecy to survive. The moment we bring shame into the light, not the harsh light, not the judgmental light, but the compassionate light, shame loses its grip. And that's why empathy is so powerful. When we share something real, our grief, our fear, our confusion, our longing, and someone responds not with fixing or with dismissing, but with understanding, something inside us relaxes. And we realize that I'm not alone in this. I'm still accepted. I didn't lose connection by telling the truth. And simply having that realization can be very deeply regulating. It doesn't change how we think, but it changes how our body feels. And the nervous system simply learns that, like vulnerability, honesty doesn't destroy us. Being seen does not equal rejection. I can survive openness. And that's why vulnerability can be so transformative. Vulnerability is transformative, not because it guarantees a perfect response, but because each moment of being met, it rewrites an old story. It rewrites that story that said, I have to hide to belong. And in the place of that story, something else grows. What starts to grow is a sense of belonging, a sense of shared humanity, a quiet knowing that what you're carrying isn't unique or shameful, it's human. And that is why connection generally begins with the words me too. Not because pain disappears, but because we don't have to carry that pain alone. Someone once locked their door to keep danger out, and they kept it locked for years. And one day they said, it's very safe in here. And to that they added, it's also very lonely in here. So, safety without connection is simply isolation, but with better furniture. So, place one hand on your chest and gently ask yourself, what would it feel like to soften just a little? What would it feel like to soften just a little? You don't need to remove the armor, simply loosen it. What would it feel like to soften just a little? And notice what happens in the body when you stop bracing. And that softness is not weakness, it's our aliveness. It's our aliveness. So we now go into a guided meditation, and I've titled this meditation The Courage to Be Seen. So if it feels comfortable, gently close your eyes and let your body settle in whatever way it feels natural. You don't need to sit perfectly. You don't need to hold yourself upright. Take a gentle breath in through the nose and a long, gentle breath out through the mouth. Once again, in and out. Nothing needs to be fixed here. Nothing needs to be proven. You are allowed to arrive exactly as you are. And bring your attention to the places where your body needs support. The chair beneath you, the floor beneath your feet, the space holding your back. And notice how that support is already there without asking anything of you. You don't have to be strong to be held. You don't have to be composed. Let your shoulders soften. Let your jaw unclench. Let your breath slow down. If tension remains, that's okay. Even the tension is welcome. And now, without judgment, bring awareness to the idea of armor. Bring awareness to the idea of armor. Not as something bad, not as something to remove, just something that once helped you. You might sense it as a tightness in the chest, or the bracing in the belly, or the readiness to hold it together, or that feeling of staying alert. Whatever your armor looks like to you, simply acknowledge it. Thank you for protecting me. Thank you for protecting me. And notice how it feels to relate to your defenses, to relate to your defenses with kindness instead of resistance. And now, very gently, bring to mind a part of you that feels tender, hidden, or slightly ashamed. Not the most overwhelming thing, just something small enough to be held safely. You're not analyzing it, you're simply noticing its presence. This part doesn't need fixing, it doesn't need explaining. It just wants to know it's not alone. Silently say to it, you're allowed to be here. You don't have to hide with me. You're allowed to be here. You don't have to hide with me. And notice what happens in the body when those words are offered. Now imagine this tender part being held in soft light, not harsh light, not exposing light, a warm, diffused light like early morning sun through a window. This light doesn't judge, it doesn't analyze, it simply says, I see you. Notice how shame responds to this. Shame doesn't disappear dramatically, it softens, it loosens, because it cannot survive in the presence of gentleness. And now imagine, not visually, but having a sense of. Imagine that you are not the only one who has ever felt this way. Imagine that you are not the only one who has ever felt this way. Others have felt this. Others have carried this. You don't need to know who they are. Simply sense the shared humanity. And let this phrase settle in your body. I am not alone. I am not alone. Notice how your chest responds, your breath, your shoulders. Connection doesn't require explanation, it requires presence. Now gently offer yourself these words slowly with space between them. I can feel this and stay. I can be honest and survive. I can be seen and remain whole. You're not convincing yourself of anything. You're letting your body learn through experience. And notice now, without trying to create it, whether there is a subtle sense of strength. Not tight strength, not armored strength, a soft strength. The kind of strength that comes from knowing I don't have to hide to be safe. I don't have to hide to be safe. Rest in this strength. And slowly begin to notice the area that you are in, the sounds around you, the temperature of the air. Take a gentle breath in, let it out slowly. Move your fingers, move your toes, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Strength isn't the absence of feeling, it's the willingness to feel without abandoning yourself. And vulnerability doesn't make you fragile, it makes you real. And real connection only happens when something real is shared. So, as we come to the end of the session, I want to invite you to pause just for a moment and notice what you're carrying with you now. Not what you've learned, but what may have softened, what may have shifted, even slightly, in the way that you can relate to yourself. So today we explored a simple but a very courageous truth that vulnerability isn't weakness, it is proof that you're alive. And the parts of you that feel tender, emotional, unsure, these are not flaws to overcome. These are doorways to real connection with yourself and with others. And if something stirred today, you don't need to rush to act on it. Take your time, let it settle, let it unfold in its own time. Because this work is not dramatic change, it's that quiet honesty. is that quiet honesty. Thank you for listening. This has been Everyday Paradoxes, Tiny Truths About Becoming. Before you move on, you might sit quietly with these questions. What did I recognize in myself today? Where is this paradox quietly at work in my life? And what is one small shift I'm being invited toward? Becoming rarely announces itself. It unfolds in awareness, in small recognitions, in the gentle courage to see clearly. This series is based on my book Everyday Paradoxes, Tiny Truths About Becoming. It's a reflective guide meant to be read slowly, not for answers, but for insights that deepen with time. You'll find the reflection questions in the description along with details about the book. If this conversation resonated, you're welcome to like, share, or subscribe so these truths can reach others who may need them. Until next time, stay present, stay curious, and keep becoming.